Hello and welcome to Cryptid Creatures with Augie Macro. Today we're going to talk about one of the most horrific and frightening urban legends in U.S. history. It is known as the Mothman. The story of the Mothman starts out in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, a town on the most western point of West Virginia. Here we are in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, at the convergence point of the Ohio and Kanawha rivers. There has been a lot of historical significance in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, from the Revolutionary War all the way up to the war between the states. Today we're going to talk about an interesting yet mysterious occurrence that happened in the early 1960s. The story of the Mothman starts out in November of 1966, whenever two gravediggers were working in the cemetery and they saw a giant black humanoid figure flying over top of them. 3 days later, on November 15th, two couples in a car were driving into Point Pleasant, West Virginia when they got chased by the Mothman. The Mothman was a lot of times seen as a 6.5 foot to 10 foot tall figure with a 10 to 30 foot wingspan. Always had glowing red eyes. Here stands the 11 foot tall, 800-pound steel sculpture of the Mothman. This was created by an artist and sculptor named Bob Roach in New Haven, West Virginia in 2003.
Augie, Mothman is a legend here in our county. He's been around since the 1960s. I had one of my better friends make this statue for Point Pleasant. You feel how strong he is? I have seen as many as 6 college girls on top of him, and they take selfies and send them around the world. Quite a character, done a lot for our town. I expect him to be here 1,000 years from now. Of course, I probably won't be here, but he'll be here.
People who had close encounters with the Mothman would sometimes say that they had inflamed eyes after seeing the Mothman. Later, at the beginning of the next year, new things started to occur. First off, UFOs. Alien spacecraft were supposedly seen over the skies of Point Pleasant. And then the so-called Men in Black showed up. Possible government agents wearing black suits, hats, and sunglasses were standing on the corner of practically every street in Point Pleasant through day and night. A lot of times coming to the houses of the eyewitnesses and telling them to not talk about their sightings. Very rudely at that.
My name is Brittany Sayre. I'm from here in Point Pleasant. I've been working for the Mothman Museum officially about a little bit over a year, but I've been involved with Mothman since, well, pretty much my whole life, but essentially since 2010 because I was Miss Mothman Festival 2010. And then I also was Ms. in 2016. My boss, Jeff Walmsley, opened it up in 2005. It's grown into quite the thing, but it was really just something that, it's our town's history. Jeff decided, hey, let's try to get some people downtown. And they're like, hey, do you want to come work at the museum? I'm like, where do I sign? The last sighting of Mothman was actually in Chicago in around 2017. We haven't had any in Point Pleasant since 1967 after the bridge fell. Of course, we get a lot of people who are like, oh, well, I think I saw the Mothman, but, they're not recorded. we actually think that my pawpaw, or my grandpa, if you're not from the Appalachia area, he was in the National Guard when all this was going on, and it turns out that there were 2 National Guardsmen out in the woods in the TNT area working on a vehicle when all this was happening, and they saw this thing up in the trees. Well, we're pretty sure one of them was my pawpaw, because the other man that we have confirmed was the other National Guardsman was a guy that my pawpaw always had to work with. So we're pretty sure that he was one of them. And my mom can remember him coming home and being like, I saw this thing, and my nanny telling him not to talk about it because they think he was crazy. I definitely think there was something. There were too many people that, you know, we're pretty honest people around here, and especially back then, you know, people wouldn't make this up. If they were genuinely scared by something, they would definitely, you know, either be too scared to talk about it, and if they did talk about it, you knew that it was true. I know that the TNT area is really polluted. It was back then, even more so than now, because that was the site of a manufacturing plant for TNT dynamite during World War II. And obviously the groundwater was very polluted. It's over the lakes. My pawpaw also went fishing and hunting up there a lot, and he would find 2-headed deer, fish with legs, just really random mutated things. So my personal thinking is that maybe there was a bird, like they've mentioned a sandhill crane or an owl or some kind of bird-like creature, maybe got into the water or ate a fish that was out of the water that may have had some kind of polluted chemical in it, and maybe mutated from there on out and grew into whatever this creature was. Where it is now, I don't know.
TNT area, a nickname given to the McClintock Wildlife Management Area, where there once was a plant which was used to create gunpowder in World War II. Because of this, pollutants got into the waters and the soil, which mutated some of the animals here. For example, 2-headed deer and fish that have legs. And this is one of the theories where the Mothman comes from. Possibly some sort of bird drinks the water or eats something that has been polluted by it and mutates into the Mothman. A lot of people have seen the Mothman in the TNT area, so it's also thought that it could live here. Years ago, they tore down the actual plant, so the Mothman, if it lives in the TNT area, would have been forced to go into the igloos. Here we are at an igloo in the TNT area near Point Pleasant, West Virginia. In World War II, these igloos were used to store powder and ammunition. And now some people have seen the Mothman and think that it could have lived in these igloos. The Mothman was known to be a harbinger of great disaster, and some people saw the Mothman flying over what once was the Silver Bridge. On December 15th, 1967, the Silver Bridge collapsed, submerging 75 cars and killing 46 people in the process. One opinion is that the Mothman, being an omen of disaster, could have been the cause of the collapse, and others think that Cornstalk's curse could have. We may never know. Here lay the remains of Chief Cornstalk. He was a Shawnee chief. In 1774, he fought here. In the Battle of Point Pleasant, he did survive though. 3 years later, he was murdered. On his dying breath, he cursed the city of Point Pleasant for 200 years. Could this be the cause of the Mothman?
Well, I can debunk the Cornstalk thing. After they tore down our old high school that had been there since the 20s, they discovered a basement, and in that basement there was a closet, and there was a script from a play from 1923. And it turns out that the whole Cornstalk curse thing was written into this play, and it's not actually documented that it ever actually happened. It just was heard by somebody and then passed on and passed on and passed on, and then next thing you know, he's responsible for every bad thing that happened in West Virginia. As for the bridge, that one's up for debate, because I just find it really odd that the bridge collapsed 13 months to the day after Mothman was sighted the first time. And the fact that he kind of disappeared after it happened makes me wonder if maybe he was kind of a warning of bad things to come or something like that. So I think those two might be related in some way, but that's about the only thing.
After the Silver Bridge collapse in 1967, the Mothman was never seen again in Point Pleasant, but was seen in other places all over the world. It was a very intriguing yet frightening story, and we may never know what the Mothman really was. Cryptid Creatures is brought to you by the Kitty Petters Union, Cobble Sound Recording Company, and my dad's show, Meet the Pressers with Matt Mallory and Clint Macro. This is Augie Macro with Cryptid Creatures signing off.